Welcome to Something to Talk About. This is the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. Hart Williams is with us today, and we're going to talk about the Jack Flash scooter jitney ride that goes back and forth during the warm months from the ferry terminal to downtown Winslow. Before we do that, though, I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island, which sponsors Something to Talk About. They offer independent living, assisted living, and a vibrant memory care community along Rolling Bay. You can take a visit and they'll treat you to lunch or dinner if you want. Just give them a call in advance. Ask for Celia or Jamie, 206-594-1010. You can find out more at fieldstonecommunities.com. Thank you, Hart, for agreeing to spend a little time with us here and talk to us about the Jack Flash.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, Jack Flash ride. I think you called it a shuttle, maybe. I don't know what what
Yeah,
you're.
Jack Flash is good enough.
Okay, so I know that it's gone through a couple of iterations, and just tell us a little bit about how it came to be. It looks like a private solution to a public problem.
Yeah, we hope it's a private solution to a public problem. Jack Flash was really born not of my brainchild, but of Jack Niehouse's brainchild. The Jack Niehouse is the son of Troy and Nicole Niehouse, and Nicole runs and operates Sweet Deal Clothing. Jack started the Sweet Deal Mobile years ago and had it up and running, and it was kind of a nice way for him to make some summer income and use his personality to introduce himself and the island to a lot of ferry travelers. Unfortunately, last year in a tragic accident, Jack passed away. And in thinking about kind of his impact and what a great guy he was, I said, we really got to keep this thing running, if nothing more, in memorial to Jack. So Jack Flash was born. My wife and I started it. It's not our primary business. It's just something that we do to, stay engaged with the community and provide a service because we know that there's a transportation need here. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to fill the gap.
Tell me how it works. When Jack was doing it, he was working off the tips. Is that how that worked?
That's exactly right. So we've taken his initial model and transformed it slightly. And last year, 2024, was really kind of a test phase for us. We weren't sure what kind of response it would have. The Sweet Deal Mobile had been gone for a year or two. We just were thinking like, hey, let's try this and see if it sticks. And where we've landed is it's a free shuttle from the ferry to downtown Winslow. It's paid for in sponsorship by a handful of the different Winslow merchants, and the Downtown Bainbridge Association is kicked in, and Visit Bainbridge and the pub and Sail Bainbridge. And we've got a wonderful realtor inside of Bainbridge Homes that's been very supportive. And we've used it as an entrepreneurial program for high schoolers. So it's an opportunity for them to get, their hands on an early stage business, learn about the operations of the business, think through the challenges that we face in terms of sponsorship, insurance, parking, ride control, safety, and help us figure out how to make this a valued community entity.
So do you actually have the kids help with some of the nuts and bolts of what you were just talking about?
Oh,
scheduling?
Hugely. They manage their own schedules in the summer. That's like the first one. They're responsible for recruiting more drivers. Of course, we go through a safety check with all of the drivers, make sure that they're up to snuff, make sure they don't have any prior accidents. They also work to help us make sure that the operational accounting of the business, meaning what goes in and comes out in terms of hours produced, tip revenue, sponsorship dollars, all of those things is all accurate. And we're making sure that we're maintaining it, in a fair method for all of the drivers. And they help us figure out ways to make it better. So a lot of the improvements that people see on Jack Flash come from the kids. It doesn't come from us.
So can you describe some of those improvements, some of those things, those innovations?
Yeah, so initially we weren't sure kind of what we would do or how we would do it, right? We just said, let's get a cart and let's get someone to drive it and let's see if people get on it. right? Of course, we got it insured and all of those things too. And now we've graduated to a very fixed schedule this year. So we're going to be in operation every Thursday through Sunday. A little bit of a restriction in May, a little bit of a restriction in September. Of course, it's also weather permitting. And when there are opportunities to drive in the middle of summer like around the 4th of July, they will operate more frequently. They've worked with us in understanding kind of like the principal sponsors, where to stop, how frequently to stop, how sponsors can call us if they've got a special need, like they've got someone who's got a disability that needs to get back to the ferry. Like, how do we get that information back to the drivers in a safe and responsible manner? So they've thought through that. They've even gone as far as to think through how we can start to put more tech enablements into the system. So how someone could theoretically request a ride if we got that far, or how we could deliver a task on someone's behalf if we got that far. And so we're still actively working on these new ideas and incubating them and seeing how they'll work in our current scenario.
So the concept is basically you have a bunch of people who are getting off the ferry, many of whom might find the trip all the way up the hill and down the street a little daunting. Plus, I'm thinking, you mentioned some of the merchants that are at the bottom of Parfit. There are parts of the town that might not be immediately visible to tourists, and it might pay those sponsors to get people down in their neighborhood.
That's all part of it. And the added benefit here is that we have these kids who were raised on this island or came here in their childhood, who know the island like the back of their hand, right? They know the best places to eat. They know their favorite shops. They know the things that make us special, right? And they're so happy to share those with people that are visiting the island. And so it's a really, really nice way for someone to get a very personalized tour guide-like experience, and also a little bit of a transportation help if they need it.
So transportation is something that is of key interest to a lot of the folks here at the community center. And I know that the city is looking at some sort of a pilot of a circulator bus. I don't know when or whether that can happen. Obviously, there's a lot of funding up in the air right now. But based on sort of your observation of transportation and how it pencils out, does it seem like it might be the kind of thing that could grow, or that could be answered with a similar, not identical need to Jack Flash?
Yeah, transportation is a big topic. And we do have a shortage of it on Bainbridge Island. And I never expected to work on a transportation company, but here we are. We're still very much in the learning phase about what the community needs are and how we can be of the most value to the community. I think that there is potential for expansion. We get a lot of inbound inquiries about everything from I need to get a ride to Blodell to I need help figuring out transportation for a private event like a wedding or a get together, to I need to get to Coppertop, to you name it. We've talked to the island volunteer caregivers and understanding their needs and how to get people from the island to their medical appointments in Seattle. I think that there's just a lot here, and we're still very much learning about the highest return on value that we can provide. But I do think expansion is possible. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way. So the very first step for us is making this shuttle better. So making this, what we provide currently in the summer, better for the community, whether they be short-term visits, i.e. tourists, or local people looking to move around Winslow a little bit more freely. And once we get this down, we're going to look at other ways that we can have impact. I think it's very reasonable that we could have private options to get to the north end of the island or the south end of the island with some regularity. How soon we do that, I don't know. We're still just kind of figuring this. We're building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak.
Sure. And we we have a 22 passenger bus that we use for excursions. We go to places like we took a trip to the tulip fields in outside La Conner last week. We go shopping. We take people with island volunteer caregivers to Silverdale once a month for shopping. People get their Trader Joe fix without having to drive themselves there. And we currently have an application before the state. I don't know what will happen with it, but we're requesting the Senior Community Center to work with Pacific Mobility to get a transit vehicle like a Ford Transit van with seats, electric, that we might be able to use without having to hire people with commercial driver's licenses, because that's a barrier for the larger vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking candidly, like we've done some preliminary workups on costs associated with operating a vehicle, right? Like operating a 15-passenger van or a regular car, electric or otherwise. It's wildly expensive. Like a lot of people don't understand what commercial auto insurance looks like. But in some cases, it can cost up to $50,000 or $60,000 a year just to insure a commercially viable vehicle. And so the cost becomes very prohibitive very quickly. Now, there are ways that we can not necessarily sidestep it. I'm not interested in finding loopholes, but like for us, we operate neighborhood electric vehicles, right? That are very inexpensive. They're about a third of the cost of a traditional van. They don't go very fast, which is limiting, and they're also open air, right? So it's also limiting in a climate such as ours. So that's one way, is that we have been able to insure them as neighborhood electric vehicles, register them as neighborhood electric vehicles. We're registered as a tour company, so we're not a commercial auto provider. But if we start getting into the zone of hiring drivers and finding more vehicles, it gets really expensive. So we need to figure out kind of ways that we can get around it. One idea that we've had, which I don't know if it'll take or not, is, well, we have all these kids. They have driver's licenses, they've got vehicles or access to vehicles. What if they could provide tasks for people that prevented them from driving to Silverdale or Bremerton or things like that, going and picking up things at Costco or picking up things at Walmart or Home Depot and bringing them back as part of the service that we provide. And so we're looking at alternative methods that might decrease the need for longer range transport and provide a little bit more value to the island. So it's tough. Like fixing the transportation problem is a big, very audacious problem. So like we've got to start where we start and learn as much as we possibly can.
Well, I think it's delightful and commendable that you're not only sticking with what you know, but kind of trying to push the limits a little bit to see what is possible. Because yeah, it is an interesting situation here because we're way at the tail end of, say, Kitsap Transit's world. And although they're doing some things like BI Ride, we have people who obviously get to the center with access. There are difficulties in terms of scheduling and that kind of flexibility that people need, where you're talking about the idea of, well, this little neighborhood vehicle is going to be by in another 5 to 10 minutes. I can wait here. Makes a big difference. I wonder if anybody who's on this call had a question that they wanted to make sure we answered today. Okay, I see Sheila and then Susan.
Yeah, I just wondered, are you working with IVC then, as far as that kind of concept of going to get medication and that kind of thing?
I had a long meeting with the executive director and one of the board members of IVC last fall. And it was really more than anything just gathering information. So I wanted to better understand the service that they were providing. And I mean, IVC is a really, really wonderful organization. And they have challenges, right? Like they've got real challenges. So we're not working with them in the sense that we're providing rides for them or we have some arrangement with IVC. We don't, but I want to learn as much as we possibly can to better understand where impact can be felt, given the constraints that we currently have with our business. So we're still actively thinking through it and figuring out what we can do. It's these things happen in cycles, which I was learning as much as I could in the fall, thinking about it all winter, and then boom, all of a sudden March hit, and I was going, oh no, we got to race because we got to get back. So we've
Right.
been working really diligently to make sure we can get Jack Flash back and on time and happening the way it was happening or better this summer. But we're always kind of thinking about ways that we can have an impact. But I think that you're absolutely right, Sheila. Getting to a place where we could help with prescriptions, that's like seems like low-hanging fruit to me. Or getting to the place where we could pick something up or use the people that are already commuting to help get things from the Seattle side over to the island. So those are all things that we're thinking about. I don't know how quickly we'll be able to launch them, but we're working on it.
I'm interested in that one about the medication, because just recently I needed to get some medication post haste and from Silverdale, and I ended up paying $10 for the messenger to go down and get it and bring it back to me up here on the island, which was really helpful. But I think it was $10, maybe it was 20, I can't remember. But again, that can get a little spendy.
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate piece is, until we have figured out all the other elements of the business unit, right, there probably will be an expense to it. But maybe there's a way where the sponsorship that we're already working on or the arrangements we have with the various vendors in town might help offset some of those costs.
Sure.
What I initially kind of looked at is what happens if we aggregate those asks, right? What happens if we say to a community of people like the senior center or others, we'll deliver from Silverdale every Friday. Right. And so we can aggregate all of those asks up for the week, and maybe we can reduce the individual cost of those asks. But by aggregating them, we can still make it profitable and make sense for the business. I'm thinking something like that might make sense, but I'm still early in the.
Yeah, well, that is certainly how we think about the shopping trips. It's like we're going to be going on the second Tuesday of every month to Silverdale, and we can give you a ride if you can make that work for you. And then people do. Susan, you have a comment or question?
Well, my question is, I love the history of Bainbridge Island as I'm learning more and more about the island since my daughter lives there, Hart. I live in Las Vegas, but she lives there. Do the students that you're training to do especially the ferry in the summer with so many people from all over the world really coming over to Bainbridge Island, do they ever give any information about the history and things like the Japanese Memorial, the Bainbridge Island Museum, the heritage from what is the tribe, Reed?
The Suquamish tribe.
The Suquamish tribe, things like that, which I think it just deepens the culture and the understanding of the people on the island.
They do. Yeah, they do. And what's really, these kids, you would be so impressed with. Like we have kids that come from all sorts of different backgrounds. We have kids that speak Spanish and French and you name it. And they've given tours in Spanish and tours in French.
Beautiful.
Worked on their linguistics, and they're working on their interpersonal skills and all of that stuff. And sometimes it's as simple as we're taking a family of 5 with a stroller to Mora. It's that simple. And sometimes it's, or what is now Island Cool, I guess.
Right,
I got to update my Bainbridge knowledge. But sometimes it is like we've had days where we take a singular person and you just take them around and they never get out of the cart. And we just show them the history and show them kind of how it started and point out different points of interest. And, sometimes people ask us to run them all the way up to the troll, and they're on a quest to see the different trolls. And we take them to Pia and take them back. So it's different for every client that jumps on the carts, but the kids are very sharp and they know the island as well as any of us.
And they try to squeeze a trip in if they can. If they're not, they have to get back to the ferry before the next ferry comes in.
Yeah, that's one thing that we're looking at is we do have some troll-specific visitors, and somehow we ended on a troll-specific website somewhere. But we're considering actually charging for troll rides because they're a little bit further, a little bit out of the way, takes the carts off of Winslow Way, decreases the level of service we can provide to other riders. So if you're looking to go to the troll, you might expect a small fee this year.
So is there a challenge with keeping the vehicle charged up?
There is, the vehicles are, they're pretty advanced. I didn't expect all this technology to be loaded in such a small package, but they're large lithium ion batteries, which is the same battery that powers an iPhone. They charge very, very quickly. So we could get a full charge in under 3 hours. They charge in a regular, 110-volt outlet. And that charge will last about 45 to 50 miles, depending on how it's driven. So we can run the carts. This year we have it scheduled to run a singular cart starting at about 11 a.m. on the days that we run. We'll have a second cart folding in about 2 or 3 and carrying on until about 5:30 or 6. So it's afternoons primarily, highest tourist traffic times. They're the most congested times on Winslow Way. So hopefully we can help kind of move people around and alleviate some of that congestion and get people to see as much of Bainbridge as we can.
So do you have you've hinted at this a couple times, but do you have an anticipated start date for this year?
Right now, understanding that the start and the finish is somewhat weather dependent, given where we are.
Right.
We're thinking the weekend of the 16th, 17th of May, we should start running for the first time this season, which is much, much earlier than what we did last year.
And you'll have the kids around, you hope? Have to wait till college is out, or?
Oh no, we've been meeting since February, so they're prepped to go. The exciting thing now for me is like getting to know these kids after a summer, is
Oh,
I'm starting
yeah.
to see what their plans are and where they're going to college, and we're seeing kind of that progression happen. And this Wednesday, I'm meeting the next class, which is, the future drivers. So that's really exciting too. So we'll get some new names and faces and new ambitions and different takes on history and language and all the things that they do when they interface with tourists that come to visit.
So I found you have an Instagram site. Is that basically the place to keep track of Jack Flash?
That's a great site. We're trying to do a better job with that this coming year. So we're pushing out a little bit more content. Our website is ridejackflash.com. That's where we will likely test things. We're a member of the Bainbridge Chamber. You can reach us through that listing, or you can just flag us down.
Thank you very much for spending some time with us today. A lot of great information. I'm very impressed. I did not have an appreciation of the breadth of the work that you and I guess your partner in crime.
Yeah, my wife Nicole, she really she burdens a lot of this. I came with the wild idea of, hey, let's buy some golf carts, and then she's been the operational brilliance behind it. So
Oh, it looks like Barbara Okoda has a comment.
I have several questions. I'll make them short. So, what kind of a license is required to operate these vehicles?
yeah, so the licensure piece is multifaceted. So of course, like for the state, we have to have a business license. In addition, we have a license with the city of Bainbridge Island. All of the individual drivers are also licensed. We file our insurance as a tour operator, so we have insurance on the vehicles as well as a blanket coverage of insurance for any error that could occur, so that we're
I'm sorry, I didn't phrase my question well enough. What kind of a driver's license do your employees need to operate these vehicles? Is it regular
Yeah,
or is
they
it
can have a
commercial?
regular driver's license
Oh, wow.
as long as we're doing the checking and the validation that there's no, irregular history, or they haven't had any accidents and things like that.
Right. And do you currently go up to Copper Top or Blodell, or is that just on a case by case basis? I mean, do you
We
have a
don't,
regular?
yeah, we don't. Blodell's,
Mhm.
one, it would be very uncomfortable to get all the way to Blodell. That's a long ways at 27 miles an hour.
Okay.
And then Copper Top, the advice we were given when we started talking to the police department and the other people about operating this business was that Copper Top feels like it's a little bit out of reach, because when you're getting all the way up Madison, all the way over on Sportsman's, and then all the way up to Copper Top, there's a lot of uphill driving, and you can start to slow down the regular path of traffic.
Mm.
And so we
Okay.
don't want to have a negative impact and have people sense that we're slowing them down. Now,
Got
getting
it.
up to the troll and back down, it's a little bit more reasonable. So we'll do that from time to time, but Copper Top's a little out of reach. What we're looking at in that space is maybe running some sort of service that would go to Blodell to Copper Top and then back down.
Okay.
But that's still in development.
And how many people does the shuttle carry?
So there's 6 seats, 6 seat belts, and
Okay.
the driver takes 1. So 5 available seats.
Okay. And do you have more than one vehicle?
Yeah, we do. We have 2 of them.
2.
And I
Okay.
think we might get a 3rd, but I'm not putting any pressure on it. We want to make sure that they're full and getting used adequately now.
But you need to charge one and then switch them out, as you described to us a minute ago.
Yeah, we do have a wonderful partner on the parking side, and so they let us rent some space with charging right on Winslow, so it's very convenient for us.
That's good.
I really appreciate how nimble you are and how wide you're casting your net in terms of running a business you never intended to do. So really kudos for that.
Oh, thanks. Well, we still got a lot to learn.
I'm really impressed with you're using the kids from school. I'm really impressed with that because
No,
that's good for them. It's good for the community. It's good for everybody.
the thing that we learned that was really fascinating is that it is, and I'm not saying it was harder when I did it or anything like that. But it's
Except
really,
it was uphill both ways
right?
to school.
Exactly.
Then
But these kids have so many more commitments than I ever expected, right?
Mm.
Between football and dance and soccer and their charity engagements and their family commitments and their school commitments and everything, like their scheduling is really hard, especially in the summer. And so getting them to work a regular job at a restaurant where they're washing dishes, it's hard. And so giving them a little bit of flexibility in the scheduling has been a huge advantage, I think, for us and for them.
I think it's a wonderful idea for all kinds of businesses. I mean, I try to do that here at the Senior Community Center. It makes for a much better experience by everybody. They're more invested when they're there. You don't have the friction, and you actually get the best out of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I just have one other little question, and that has to do with the tips. That how much? Someone asked me how much should they be giving the driver?
I mean, the politically correct answer is whatever you feel comfortable with.
I figured that.
we have some really generous people that come, and usually the most generous people are the people that come and they jump on it and they start to get the value out of our, teenage aged tour guides, right? And they'll take them and maybe they get off the cart, maybe they don't. And that's been great, but it's certainly not expected. If you need a ride, just jump on. And if you don't have a couple of bucks on you, no big deal. So use it. It's valuable if it gets used. But yeah, don't think that there's an appropriate amount. Like if you had a good experience, celebrate them. If you didn't, no sweat.
Okay, thank you, Hart, and thank you all for those wonderful questions. I think it was a worthwhile endeavor for us to spend a few minutes together, and here's to a great season, and look forward to hearing more from you, Hart. Feel free to check in with the Senior Community Center anytime.
Will do. Thank you all.